Good Tuesday morning, Moms of Master Books. Today we are going to have a question and answer session. Some of the questions that were posted, we know a lot of you are making some last minute buying decisions, and when we can do this and kind of help clarify some things, that's what we want to do. I'm joined today by our publicist, Brittany.
Hi.
And she is going to give me the questions, and as fast as we can, we'll go through as many of them as possible. And she's also going to check comments here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start answering some questions.
Okay. And ahead of time, I apologize if I get anybody's names wrong. Jashana Ramirez asked, any news on the art course?
The art course is in design right now. I know they're working on some images for it. That project should go together pretty quickly. I don't have the date yet. I know it's a priority here, and the team is working on it. So, yeah, probably in September is my guess.
Okay. Stacy Smith asked, what are the differences in Adventures in Creation Level 1 and God's Design for Life beginners?
You know, I had this all printed out and I didn't get it. Anna had given me the answer. I know this, but Adventures in Creation is a little bit more, it uses stories. It's more conversationally based. And the God's Design for Science is a little bit more, it's got information and textbook driven. And so Adventures in Creation also has more information regarding like general science, multiple things for science of what you would encounter for creation, where God's Design for Life for beginners focuses more on animals, plants, and humans. So a good overview to science, a scientific method, hypothesis, those types of things you would find in Adventures in Creation. Just God's Design for Science with life, that would be more like a life science. You wouldn't get the other sciences like, light and matter and all of that.
Awesome. Melody Little asked, how can I keep my kid engaged in Bible teachings? He has been churched his whole life and now homeschooled with these great materials. He finds things like Sunday school and Bible school very childish, but he's not that engaged in big church either. He's age 9. Any ideas?
Yeah, application. So the best, knowledge only takes us so far when we start applying it. Like I can sit at a piano all day long and learn theory, but it's not until I actually go and start playing with people that I actually start wanting to take the theory. So something like beginning to teach younger students, right? Volunteering in a class at church that's working with younger students, or maybe going to a homeless shelter or a teen challenge, a drug addiction center, and just having exposure to those types of things to apply faith. I think that would probably be it. To tell or motivate somebody, you need to be interested in Bible when it's not, for me, my biggest growth always comes when it's, I've got to begin applying knowledge and defending my faith or helping inspire people. So that's probably what I would say is start finding some ways to bring application to it.
Awesome. Caitlin Morris says, I'm overwhelmed with keeping up with each child's separate courses, supplies for each, and the time it takes to spend teaching them. Any time-saving tricks? I haven't started yet because I don't feel like I'm on top of things. It takes me a while to understand the flow of various curriculums. My main subjects I'm overwhelmed by include American Story 1, Geography and Cultures, and God's Design for Life. Can you help this perfectionistic mom who's too tough on herself?
Yeah, so I would definitely agree. Is Caitlin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Caitlin, I would definitely agree. You're a perfectionist, and you're probably being way too hard on yourself. If you're in those courses, those are designed for independent learning, right? Those are the ages that a student should be able to read the material, answer the questions, do that type of thing. So what I would say in a case like this is back up a little bit. Don't kind of cut back to to the things that work. Like, you don't need to have a planner if you have the daily schedule. Now, if you want a planner and that helps you, fantastic. But a lot of times that can create more work, and so it inhibits you. The other thing would be, if just start where you are. Don't. It doesn't have to be perfect to start. So, one of them was applied. Was it the applied?
America Story 1, Geography and Cultures, and God's Design for Life.
Yeah, so that should be fun. Those should be fun. And if you follow the lesson plan in the beginning, and then work with the student when they need some intervention, but those shouldn't be overwhelming. And if they are overwhelming, chances are you're trying to add too much or force it. You know that sometimes there's momentum, and when we push things and the cause resistance, it just makes things harder than actually just letting the current go. Yeah, there we go. There's I needed an analogy. So Master Books should work like this. It should be like a boat that you get into that just follows the current. And as long as you just follow the current and bring it a little, steer it here and steer it there, it should take you where you want to go. If you're trying to fight the current or go upstream or do something it wasn't intended to do, then you'll just exhaust yourself. That's why it's open and go. The student does it. It has the schedule and all of those things to kind of make it so that you don't need to fight the current. Just go with the current and give it gentle nudges in the direction you want to go. And then I would also try to simplify as much as possible. Like, go to the basic four, right? Do the math, the language, the social studies, the science, and keep it as simple as possible as you get your sea legs. Perfection doesn't exist, so don't try for perfection. Just work towards a goal, right? I mean, ultimately, that's what we have to do, is just, what is the goal, and how do we begin moving in that direction?
All right, in the live comments, Jeannie Cahill, I probably butchered your last name, sorry. Is Anatomy and Physiology 2 a credit course for a 7th grade student or just 8th? Are there supplemental materials needed to make it high school credit worthy?
Okay, it is a high school level course. It would be an elective. 7th and 8th graders would not be earning high school credit, so that wouldn't apply. It would be more a 9th grade student or a student who is, I think, over the age of 14 that would be earning credit for towards their graduation. So 7th and 8th grade, no. If you're doing that in 9th through 12th grade, it would count as a credit. Nothing additional is needed. You could do additional. It doesn't have labs or anything like that, so it would just be an elective.
Okay. And then Heaven Hammond asked, what's a typical delivery turnaround time? We can't order until mid-August, and I'm afraid that'll set us back. This is our first year.
Right now, they're probably about 2 to 4 days turnaround on orders, just because the weekend orders and stuff like that. Mid-August, as long as inventories holds, we're selling. The sales are extreme right now, and we're pretty good on inventory. But there's a few things where inventory has we're waiting on some reprints and stuff. So I think you should be okay, but you may be looking at, up to a week before the turnaround if it's mid-August.
Right. Carla Sinclair asked, I saw a couple weeks ago on a post that the World of Science book was not going to be published anymore by Master Books, and I know Language Lessons for Living Education 6 is being written to use the 10-minute Bible Journey book because the Illustrated Family Bible Stories is also not going to be published by Master Books. Is there any list of other great resources that may not soon be available for Master Books?
Yeah, I don't have any active list like that. Those are the Master Books is a publisher. We publish most of the materials we have. In some cases, if there's a material that we really like from another publisher, we'll contact that publisher and we may license that product. So the products that you mentioned were licensed products. The company that was publishing or had the rights to those has gone into bankruptcy, and we don't have, because of that, we just don't have access to continue the license that we had. So in those cases, those few products like World of Animals, World of Science, the Illustrated Bible, those are ones that had license deals. Everything else, Master Books, we're the publisher. So there may be some things that we're not selling as much of that may be going out of print, but for the most part, I don't foresee a lot of big changes like that.
Great. Back into the live comments, Leslie Bellamy asked, is Writing Strands beginning one a complete language arts course?
Depends on who you ask. If you ask me, I say it is. It teaches grammar as you go. It teaches what you need to know. Other people feel the need to teach their kids a little bit more as far as, grammar components. So in that case, if you're talking Writing Strands 1, you may want to combine it a little bit with, I don't think you need to. I would probably use, if you're looking for a heavier grammar course, I would probably go towards Language Lessons for a Living Education, and then I would pick up your Writing Strands in like grade 7 after you've had a pretty good foundation in grammar. If you're more interested in teaching writing and the grammar as you go and the basics like nouns, verbs, adjectives, those types of things, without a lot of the in-depth study of grammar, then Writing Strands would be sufficient.
Awesome. Amy Smith asked, for those of us who have pre-ordered More Than Words 2, is it possible to get a PDF of the first several weeks once available? We start school on August 19th and would love to be able to start it while we wait for a physical copy.
Seeing how that product isn't behind, it's a little bit harder to do a blanket like that. My recommendation, if you're starting school and it's out and I don't know if that's available for pre-order or not. Did she say it's pre-ordered?
Yeah, she said for those who have pre-ordered, so it must be.
Yeah, in that case, I would contact customer service and see what they can do for you. I won't say that blanket we were, Simply K we did, and some of those where the date had moved and we knew it had messed up some schedules, but where it's not late, I don't know that I can make a blanket call that we're going to send that out, but we may be able to make some exceptions.
Awesome. Natalie Duhan asks, is Master Books planning on doing a music course?
At some point, we'd love to. Yeah, we've reached out in that area. It's not one of the courses, so it's something that when we find the right solution and it fits the worldview and whatnot, that we would definitely be interested in a music course, but it's not slated for the catalog in the next year.
Back to the live comments, Linda Reddock asked, what was the inspiration behind Master Books? What brought Master Books about? I'd not heard of Master Books until a few weeks ago.
It's a great question. Master Books was started in, I think, 1976. If you're familiar with Dr. Timothy LaHaye, who was he was the creator of the Left Behind series and some of those, and Dr. Henry Morris, who had wrote a book called The Genesis Flood, they started the publishing company really to promote creation science. Creation science is it's studying science fields that prove the Bible is right and that the timetable of the biblical creation, it's a young earth and that the Bible can be trusted and that all of science points to the accuracy and integrity of Scripture. And so we are an apologetics company. Our mission is ink on paper to impact eternity. That continues to be the mission that we have. We really launched into the homeschool side 2012. We had always been part of selling product to the homeschool community, but we hadn't had a curriculum. And so in about 2012, we really went intensely after turning our products into curriculum and developing solutions where we saw the need. And the need was really just faith-building material that took an unapologetic stand. All of our materials very apologetic in nature. Solutions that were affordable and easy for a parent to administer rather than being overwhelmed by it, and students that engage or curriculum that engages a student rather than just trying to fill their head with knowledge, actually inspires them to want to learn more and to grow in their understanding.
Awesome. Anastine Corbel asked, for language lessons for living education, it says to do independent reading. Is there a certain amount of time recommended for daily reading, specifically second grade?
In second grade, I would say stamina. It depends on stamina. if there's others who are watching, I know Carrie Bailey would probably have a good answer on this. Kristen would have a good answer on this. But I would say it's on stamina. Don't push them to say, no, you must read an hour of books a day. Just reward the behavior you want. So when they read something, discuss it, have fun with it, talk about it. If they're an avid reader, just keep feeding the fire and reward the behavior that you want. But don't try to set in second grade, right? That's a really hard age to say, this is what a second grader should be reading. Mm-hmm. So for some second graders, it may be a very simple book or an article or even just a paragraph, or sometimes what we've seen in our house is even the fact books, like the Big Book of Animals is a great book to just say, let's just read about one animal, or let's just read about one paragraph about, a kind of a factoid page. And then they get excited about it, and then it begins to grow from there.
Okay. Lindsay Glover asks, any chance Master Books will work with Homeschool Planet with the lesson plans?
It's not on our radar. We have our lesson plans at the beginning of each book, and I don't think we've had anybody who's contacted us about wanting to incorporate our lessons into it. But at this point, our team there's so much on everybody's plates. We're kind of staying the course with where we are.
Right. Melissa Duval asks, any tips on how to use one book or level for multiple kids? For example, how can I use God's Design for Beginners, book 1, for my 2 kids who are 2 years apart in age? Is it possible to differentiate so that I could use it for both kids at once?
Yeah, so in some cases, you may be better using you can use like God's Design for Life with God's Design for Life for the older students, and there's a schedule that coordinates those. A lot of times it's easier to go with a higher level course and just have the younger students participate and in the discussion, participate in the experiments and that type of thing. You have to be a little bit creative, but the end goal, we've even had our older students teach the younger students content from the books, because that helps them stay engaged, and it helps them, kind of develop the teamwork concept. I know there's different discussion in this group for multi-age classrooms. If you go to the search bar and type and search for multi-age or multi-grade, mm-hmm. you might be able to find some really good discussions and input from people within the group as well.
Awesome. Laura Wyrick asks, wondering if, no, just give me that one, hang on. We already kind of answered that. Sherry Madrilejo. I 100% butchered that, so I'm sorry. She said, will Adventures in Creation have higher levels all the way up to level 6?
That's my prayer. Yeah. I'm hoping that it does. You take those one at a time, and I know for sure Adventures in Creation 2 is in the works, and since it's my daughter that's writing it, I've been putting a lot of pressure, peer pressure on her to write up to level 6.
Jeannie Cahill asks, is there another high school history curriculum other than the current STOBA in the works?
It's loosely on the radar, but we don't have one in-house that's being worked on right at the moment.
Chase and Melissa Rampy asked, tips for keeping little ones 4, 3, and 10 months from being a distraction, but also not neglected, like sent alone to their room while the big kids are doing work.
Well, that's probably not a good question for me. So, Kristen managed 9 kids, and she was homeschooling the bulk of you guys, and she had 4 boys, one with pretty severe special needs, under the age of 4. And a lot of times she had kind of a play area set up in that area, right? Where they would just kind of go and play and stuff. But that's just one of those seasons that's hard. And I think then other times you guys were pretty independent as well. Right. So you would go and do, you would just kind of work on your own type of stuff, and she would come in as needed, but she couldn't be focused on them 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Adrian Burns said, any plans to release manipulatives or games to go along with math lessons for living education?
Yeah, manipulatives, we're talking about it. We're actually, my designer in marketing is going to be working on some of those cards, the cards that you draw. Yeah, the flashcard, but there's right brain flashcards that parents who aren't as creative are going to be able to have access to, where the student could cut it out, draw on them, and do stuff like that. So I expect a lot more over the next year from the math lessons for living education, whether it's classroom posters, some manipulatives. We have a teaching companion coming out for the series that's being worked on. So I do expect to see a thickening of math lessons for living education now that the product is, it's gone through the first generation. Now it's gone through a revision. It's pretty solid. We've got good feedback. We see the results of students who are, doing well on standardized tests. And so we know that, it's a competitor. So yeah, I would expect more from that product over the next year.
Great. Andrea Tolley asked, when will a preview of More Than Words 2 be available? I'm unsure whether to get level 1 or level 2.
Level 2 should be available. I know it's in the final stages of design, about to go to proof. So probably within the next 2 weeks, there will be one. Very roughly, level 1 was written up to 3rd grade in mind. So lower elementary students would do well in level 1. Upper elementary is level 2. That's the target age ranges that they're designed for. The content, I think this was kind of a question. The content in those two for elementary students is pretty much the same. It just approaches it a little bit different and has a little bit different depth for the upper elementary students.
Ashley Williams asked, any new release info on language lessons for living education level 6?
That is all written except for some of the spelling that's more difficult. And if you've tracked or followed this group, the author, who is my wife, Kristen, she has been battling breast cancer and gone through the chemotherapy. She has successfully survived 5 rounds. On good weeks, she's been applying herself to getting a lot of it written, and she has some goals to getting that done and language lessons for living education level 1 done before she does surgery. So hopefully language lessons, by the end of the year, those should be available. I wouldn't count on them before November, December, just because of the process that it has to go through.
DV Bates in the live comments, she said, for someone who is new to Master Books, is there a recommendation section of what kind of curriculum to use or placement surveys to know what level to get? Also, does Master Books have unit studies?
Very basically, if you go to shop by grade, there's a full grade set. That would be the rough estimation of what we would say. If you have a 5th grader, that's what I would recommend very quickly. If you want to adapt that a little bit, then what I would recommend is doing some placement tests for the math, and then there's a placement guide for language, and so you could customize it a little bit there. As far as social studies and science goes, you have a lot of freedom. As long as you're not using high school chemistry and elementary, you have a lot of freedom there that doesn't need a placement test.
Right. Teresa Minoz, again, another name I probably butchered. She asked, does Master Books have any books on grieving the death of a loved one for kids?
For kids, it doesn't. The one book you might look at is Why is Kiko Sick? That might be one that you would look at for kids. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. The book on, what's the book on suffering by Ken Ham? If somebody knows that book.
I can't remember which one it is.
Yeah, it really discusses, for adults, it gives us a good understanding of how to answer that. But Why is Kiko Sick does talk about living in a fallen world and why some kids are sick and that type of thing. So right. If there are any moderators listening that might be willing to post some links to that comment, that'd be awesome.
Okay. April Floyd asks, any tips for fostering a more independent spirit within my kiddos, ages 11 and 8?
Yeah, just put it up on the wall, suck it up, Buttercup, and no, sorry. I reward the behavior that you want, right? So when you see them taking time to kind of read it and work on it, just tell them, hey, that's awesome. Good job. I love that you took time to read it and answer it and do it yourself. You're growing up to be such a big boy or big girl. That reward will encourage the behavior that you want. So I would encourage that. At those ages, though, they still love that involvement. So you kind of got to still have the connection, but you're also working them towards the individuality. And I know for our boys, when you catch them in that moment and you can just be like, good job, man. I see you're growing up on me. You're becoming a big guy. They eat that up and they want to continue in that behavior. And so that's my best advice for that.
Awesome. Chantel Peterson asked, any plans for Canadian social studies, geography, history, etc., like the My Story but Canadian?
Yeah, we've had a lot of requests for it. Unfortunately, there's nothing on the slate for that. We haven't had any proposals for a Canadian history. If you are here and you have written Canadian history, I would encourage you to submit it. We have a place to submit manuscripts. And I say this for anybody who's watching. If you have a curriculum idea where you have written a curriculum and you want to submit it, if you go to nlpg.com, and it might be on Master Books too, down on the footer, there's a tab for submit a manuscript. And as manuscripts come in, now very few manuscripts get chosen just because of the nature of how many come through and it just, the projects that were out. But feel free to submit that. And if you have a history, sometimes even like with a history, we may be able to sell that or market that as a digital rather than having to actually bring it to print because the market may not warrant print. So yeah, we'd love to have suggestions or submissions on that.
Awesome. In the live comments, Lisa Ziarnik asked, how do I help my child that struggles with anxiety on quizzes and tests? We are new to homeschooling and I'm not sure how to help her. Ideas.
You could try some things like instead of making her sit there and take the quiz and test, maybe orally give it, like just ask the questions and kind of have a discussion and then again, reward that behavior. So when you get done with the quiz and if they've done well and they understand it, be like, hey, you just took a test and you got it. Maybe pre-test, right? Go through the questions, ask them about it, and then have them answer the questions. As well. We had a student that was really struggling with test anxiety, and I kind of pre-tested her and said, okay, this is going to be on the test. This is going to be on the test. Don't worry about it if you get it or not. Do we understand it? And then when she took the test, she did really well with it, and that was enough to just help her. So it's kind of that. I've talked about it in a lot of videos in the past about growth hacking, but just testing a little bit of this, a little bit of that. When you find something that works and helping relieve that, one thing I would definitely say is make sure you don't have test anxiety. Make sure that you don't feel like if my kid doesn't do well on this test, then I'm a failure as a homeschool mom. So she better do better on this test. And because fear and anxiety are contagious. And if you have that as a parent, your kids will feel that anxiety, that tension, that fear.
Right. And it's not the end of the world if you get an answer wrong, because I had that real bad too. To know that, okay, we got it wrong. Let's see how we can learn from it and prepare for like the final exam better, I think. And then just giving time. I think I always tried to like rush through it because I thought I was just going super slow and I didn't want to be slow on tests and stuff. So I think allowing time to actually take the test and work through it.
We would all do a standardized test, and Brittany's two brothers, one of her older brothers he just wanted to be done with the test to be outside, right? So he would just go through and check just about anything because he wasn't a perfectionist and he really didn't have anything to prove, so he didn't care. It would drive Brittany nuts because he'd be like done and she's like just starting to write her name.
I'm like, I must be really stupid because he's already done it out the door. That was really easy for him, but it's taken me forever. So. And
then their test scores would come back and it's like, what are you thinking? Yeah.
Okay, Jana Springer asked, she said, there's very little advice for moms only teaching one child. Most advice is geared toward teaching multiple children. Any advice on how to keep your only child engaged and interested? This is our first year using Master Books Curriculum. I want to keep everything interesting and exciting. Sometimes it's hard to do with just one child.
Yeah, a family adventure. I mean, when you have one student and you can do things like you can okay, so the challenge I have, right? When I go home, I have 6 kids that are still in the home environment. Each one has their own interests. They're just firing 1,000 things. When, say, Brittany and I go out and our common interest is music, when we go someplace with music, I can be very focused on her interest and we can talk about music and these things. So being able to really help that one student focus on that one thing rather than I'm only giving you 20% of what I've got to give today because everybody else has something else. So I don't see it as a negative. I see it as, you guys have like more freedom to go and do field trips, explore things, take trips together, because for us with 6 kids, that's a big deal. And it takes a lot of coordinating. If it was just one kid, I'd be like, man, we're going to go, we're doing lake day, park day, museum day, just a lot of things outside of the books.
Right. Christina Abels said, I recently read about an organizational tool that is in the works at Master Books. Not exactly a planner, but something to help centralize some of the record keeping. Can you elaborate more on what exactly it will contain and when it will be released?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm working on this, actually. It is a cumulative record. The designer and I put a lot of it together. It's in the final stage of just kind of fine-tuning it. It'll be available. It'll be a digital or it'll be print. It's going to be 3-ring binder shrink wrap, which means it won't be bound in a book. It's essentially, it's going to be hard in this lighting, but each grade, you will have a kind of your student information, grading, a place to put their picture, keep their attendance record. It focuses on 4 main things for every grade level: the intellectual record, growing in knowledge, understanding wisdom; physical growth, growing in stature; spiritual growth, growing in favor with God; and social, growing in favor with man. So those for every grade level, there's kind of an academic record that you'll be able to keep. Then in the back of it, we're going to have, there's a place to have a transcript. So we have a sample transcript, then we have the transcript that you can use as an official record. And then we have stuff like science lab reports. So it's a template that you could make copies of or use with your student anytime they want to do a science labs of, what's the purpose, hypotheses, procedure, materials. There's going to be a field trip record, so you could record all the field trips that you've done. We have a blank schedule that if you love the Master Books schedule, if you love the Master Books schedule, you could use that to create a schedule for any course that you used, some curriculum planning sheets, and I think we got a report card sheet that's going to be there if you wanted to give the student a report card. It'd be a template that you could use. So just some basic stuff like that. And then we also have a punch list of math objectives, like, grade 1 objectives. What should a first grader have? They should write numbers from 0 to 100, and there's like 6 or 7 objectives that they should have. And then we have a language arts objective page. So it's the cumulative permanent record. And the heart behind this is if you keep this for each student, for each grade, you'll have a record that if anybody ever comes to your door, you ever have to say, well, we've homeschooled, and they say, well, prove it. And I can say, well, I've kept a record. Here's what they did in second grade, first grade. Here's their grades. Here's all the information, how many days they schooled, all of that type of thing. And you'll be able to buy this in a physical copy where we'll send you the sheet shrunk wrap, or you can buy the digital, which is probably what I would recommend for a lot of people because you can print off the pages as you need them. And I think that it would be a lot of just really valuable information for people who are just, here's the record that we have. We put this in a 3-ring binder as we're working on it, and I think that that's a fantastic idea. But I know Kristen said a lot of people will put them in a folder, like every grade, every year will have a folder, and they'll keep the sheet there. So there's going to be a lot of different ways you can manage it, but that's what's coming. Hopefully that'll be available by the end of the week.
Sweet. Crystal Talton asks, how long until basic language skills is made into language lessons 1?
By the end of the year.
Okay. Beth Speck asks, are there timelines in all of the America stories and world history studies?
Yes, they're different kinds of timelines, and you can create your own timeline as well, but there are timelines.
Shelly Zabawa asked, she said, thank you so much for all the time you spend giving us all these tips and information. It is so appreciated. I'm curious about the new Adventures in Creation series. My daughter will be in 3rd grade this year and wondering if level 1 will still work for her. And also curious about if you are putting out a language lessons K in the future.
Language lessons K, no, because we really teach phonics. We recommend teaching phonics to a 1st grader and doing Simply K. So we would recommend Simply K, then Foundation Phonics, then Basic Language Skills for a 1st grade, or Language Lessons for a Living Education 1 after Foundation Phonics or after your student can read, and then you would move into the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in subsequent grade levels. As far as using Adventures in Creation, the science, let's talk science. You could use it with a 3rd grader. It will be more designed for like that 1st grade level, but you could use it there for sure. And what you could do is thicken it up. So if there's a certain topic or discussion, you could definitely get more information, find another project, and thicken it up for your student.
So these 2 questions kind of tie into each other a little bit. Casey Laszlo asked, will there be a math curriculum added for 11th through 12th graders? And Crystal Johnson asked, is Algebra 2 targeted for release for 2020 or 2021 school year?
Algebra right now is targeted for release in 2020 school year. So we're hoping that that will be in design by next spring. Going further, well, right now that's a pretty big project, but most likely, yes, what I would anticipate would be some kind of a consumer or entrepreneurial math as well for 11th and 12th graders, because that's a real big need. So yeah, we're not done developing math curriculum, but because those projects are so large, they're one at a time.
Emmy Welke asks, any advice for a child who is very much a perfectionist and tends to be way too hard on herself with any minor mistakes when she's doing school, which causes her to shut down? She's 6. I feel like Master Books has already helped this a lot compared to our previous curriculum, but it's still something we are working on.
What say you?
What say me? Again, mistakes, I'm just learning that mistakes aren't bad. It's okay to make mistakes because we learn from our mistakes. And if I make a mistake, that's awesome because now I have an opportunity to learn from it and I can better myself. I can shoot for more perfection because I'm like, it's something I can learn from and improve on.
Yes.
So.
One of my favorite quotes that I'd put on my wall for a lot of years was, measure success by success, not by the number of failures it takes to achieve it. And that when you're working with a perfectionist, we're growing. We as people grow all the time. There is no such thing as perfect. It's all growth. And even what was perfection yesterday isn't perfection today. So what got me here, even as a company, right? What got us to the point where we are today isn't going to sustain us in the future. So we're constantly having to grow and evolve. I think when a student puts pressure on themselves that everything has to be perfect and their identity is built up in that, it really is just continuing to affirm them that they're not the sum total of their mistakes or the score on a test. And I think you have to be careful with that too, that to say sometimes, even if you didn't get an A today, you would still be an awesome kid.
It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. I have a sign over here says, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
Learning is a win. It's something that I've had to learn a lot over the last few years.
Yep.
Because I've had such horrible anxiety about it. Learning is winning. So
I like that. That's pretty good.
Just used your little sign.
Learning is winning. Wow. Hashtag learning is winning. That's good. Okay.
Donna Maxwell asked, any tips on writing strands? I'm going to order that next year and cannot wait.
Yeah, there's a video in this group by the founder, Dave Marks.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't find it, maybe ask some in a post. But that video, he talks about the heart behind the curriculum, why he wrote it, what he intended it to do. That will shed the most light. The second thing is read the teaching companion. Understand what the heart behind the course is.
Awesome. And one more. Lori Woods asked, would more than words one work for a fifth grader?
I would wait for 2. That would be my recommendation. I think they'll get more out of level 2.
Awesome. That's
Okay.
all I got.
Good. Well, a couple things that, as far as inventory goes, basic language skills, the Charlie and Trike Adventure, which was a hardcover book, we've ran out of that, and we ran out of the teacher guide. So right now we're using, we're shrinking the papers. We're doing them on 3-hole punch and then shrunk wrap with a cover on it. And we formatted the Charlie and Trike book to a printout saddle stitch book so that they have the content. We lowered the price on that a little bit because it's not the hardcover and it's not the bound book, but that's something that we have there. Definitely right now, phones, if you have a question, the best thing to do is go through the customer service, the little lifesaver icon up on the website, and we're trying to respond as quickly as possible, but we are definitely maxed out. Brittany is dressed for warehouse today because she never knows when she's going to get called to the warehouse. And then I told her she's doing a Facebook Live with me. So I've seen just about every level down there working in the warehouse, trying to get orders out in a timely manner too. So, okay. I think that's it. Hopefully this is helpful. And we will be back on Thursday with teaching tips. And if you have any questions, we'll continue to watch this, but I'll probably do a couple more of the Q&As just to answer questions that people have, because I know there are so many people on the website this morning. It's been insane. And we just get as many answers as we can. That's what we want to do. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. God bless you guys. Have a fantastic day.